early. Sometimes it's good to be early. But our show starts at a specific time. You should remember that. Let's get started then, shall we?
Dylan, I don't give a what you think about a co-host and freshen up my show.
It might not be flashy, but sometimes you just got to toss another person to make a statement.
My show's about the People's Podcast. Everyone has a voice. I don't need a co-host. Go listen to one of the other 5,000 shows with a co-host because they don't have a mouth like the big guy.
Opie, are you a career killer with Tim Sabian, yourself, and many others?
Be myself. Never had real issues with those people. They just understood that I was a different bird. The rest of them, though, I'm like, oh, shut up. I'm paying your salary because the ratings are so good, so shut up.
Right.
Live from
Somewhere.
it's
Dylan.
Good whatever to you, whenever you're watching this episode of Chatting with my guest, Luigi Greenberg. How is your morning, Mr. Greenberg?
Hello. Having a great morning. Thanks for having me. How about yourself?
Doing pretty well. You gave us a nice Seinfeldian hello. La, la, la. I love those random references. The Uncle Leo reference that came on yesterday's episode. I went down that rabbit hole for a while.
Yeah, I always love I guess I feel a little bit of pressure always with the initial hello, and that's probably where that comes from. Probably just nervous energy.
And I am your host, Dylan. I forgot to make an intro for this week's Chatting With. Last week, the extra couple of minutes we were late was me throwing it together, but we started going down a rabbit hole pre-show where I was like, oh, fuck the intro. Let's talk about, well, there's the first F-bomb 2 minutes in. Whoops. But we are getting into graphic content because you mentioned Robert Zadar's early movie career before he got into B movies. I was unaware that he was below that in his initial roles.
Yeah, to let the audience in on our conversation, Robert Zadar, which I assume just everybody knows who Robert Zadar is. We'll just go on that assumption. Was in a softcore porn movie that I saw on Skinamax called Wild Cactus. And oddly enough, I don't remember the full plot of it, but somebody else that was in it was the guy who played the werewolf, or the lead character of American Werewolf in London. Who was that guy?
I remember American Werewolf in Paris more, the 90s kind of sequel, kind of remake. I don't have as many memories of the original American Werewolf in London. So it was a Skinamax. It wasn't like actual penetration happened because that's all simulated on Skinamax.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. Yeah, it was David Naughton was the guy's name. Okay, so he has a very familiar face if you see it. But yeah, it was a Skinamax movie. It had something to do with, oh God, some sort of heist that goes wrong, and then these criminals end up in a house with this honeymooning couple, and Robert Zadar shenanigans. I honestly don't remember the plot at all, but
we hear what women look at men with big feet, but what is a chin that size? Like, he makes Jay Leno's chin look like an average chin. I wonder what the ladies think if he has a big member with that. And if it wasn't Skinamax, we'd know too.
You know, I think I once heard or read somewhere that he had it was a medical condition where you can get like calcium deposits in your jaw. I don't know that it was true. It was somebody speculating, but I remember that the condition that they were suggesting he had was called cherubism, which is supposed to mean like the cherub angels, like it's supposed to be a cute disease. And then I went and looked up cherubism. If you Google it, Robert Zadar's face shows up.
So they've claimed him.
Yeah, exactly.
The internet has claimed him as a cherubism. We're not sure if that's true or not, but we're going to go ahead and trust the wiki site on that it's a cherubism. And before we go any further, we did have some chats that disappeared, as our buddy Spurgsnake pointed out. I don't know why sometimes when you drop them in early, I did take a screenshot. Crumb became a member. I believe that showed up on yesterday's episode. A $2 super sticker by A. Smith with a cool avocado. And Hack Rides, what's he rambling on about? If there is not an hour of questions about a grown man passing out on a rug. Sorry, I've got my screen is a little messed up here. Passing out on a cat rug. Don't even do the interview. I'm unaware of this cat rug.
I am too. I have no idea what he's talking about.
So maybe that was a Robert Zadar movie we didn't see. Hopefully Red Letter Media will cover that, because that's how I remember the name Robert Zadar. I recognize that jaw from B movies, but thanks to those guys, people like Cameron, oh fuck, I forget, his name is escaping me now, but some of those B movie actors like Robert Zadar, now I recall their name.
I also, whenever you mention Robert Zadar, if I've ever heard it, I always think of Mystery Science Theater. There is a lot of crossover there.
Cameron Mitchell, before I go too far. Cameron Mitchell, both a favorite of Mystery Science Theater and Red Letter Media too.
Yeah. But they, what was the name of the movie? I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was a sci-fi movie with Robert Zadar.
This Island Earth, the movie is the only actual title I remember from the Mystery Science Theater. All the rest were and that was their episode titles. I don't recall which Zadar movie they watched.
Well, they watched two. I can actually think of one. I can think of the name of the other one. The other one was called Soul Taker, but the other one was, oh man, it was a sci-fi movie about these time travelers having to try to stop the future. It was kind of a Terminator ripoff, but I'll never forget Crow saying that guy's face looks like a catcher's mitt, and I don't know why that always just sticks with me, and I always use that in conversation to someone with a big chin. By the way, Hackwright's comment about the cat rug is an inside joke between he and I and DJ Electra, in which, as I'm getting older, I do not handle my drugs as well as I used to as a younger man. And I had a friend over who brought some edibles, and I took them and passed out immediately onto my floor. It just knocked me out. And we were in the living room where my wife had decorated our room, and she has a leopard skin print rug. And while I was passed out, my friend was laughing at me because I had started eating and only took 2 bites of a steak and then passed out next to it. And my friend thought it would be a hilarious picture to take of me passed out next to a full plate of food. And I thought it was funny. And I sent it to my friends, and they betrayed me.
And now Hack Ride is letting the cat out of the bag after it was under you for so long.
Yes, that's what he's talking about. And I'm an old man. I can't do edibles as much as, or God, at all anymore now. They just knock me out.
It's been a while since I did them. I enjoyed overdoing it on edibles, because overdosing, if you will, on edibles is very similar to a mild trip of psilocybin. So I am a fan of those.
Yeah. Man, it's weird. I guess you kind of have to be like up in the know with edibles, because when you take them, I wasn't even aware that there were time released edibles that you can get. And that was my problem, was I wasn't feeling any effect from the first round. So we went a second round and then a third round. And
that's what I did with my homemade ones. Yeah, we made some homemade Twinkie edibles. And the first one, after like 45 minutes, not feeling it, let's take another one. And then, we were definitely getting that psilocybin kind of effect.
And the entire time, I was actually cooking. grilling. I was grilling food, grilling that steak, and then just boom, like I'd already finished it, had a full plate of
Phew.
food, and then out of nowhere, I was like, oh, I can't eat.
You started to get a little scratchy there during that last story you were telling. The audio is being a little disagreeable at the moment. And doing a few sound checks. I'll go ahead and give a plug to the Unboxing Eric show while you fiddle around there in the background.
Did something happen with my sound?
Now your sound is good again.
Okay, what happened? It was weird. I couldn't hear you, and anyway, sorry.
It was like scratchy. I started plugging Unboxing Eric. That is a nice nostalgia show that I believe you said both you and Hackride are, or Casey Day rather, the person whom Hackride lives inside, no homo, are going to two different sources to find all of these 800 calls, which definitely I was a fan from the beginning, at the time it was happening, when people would send in emails, get this guy off the air. I was not one of those. I was always, yes, more, give me more. Yum, 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 yum.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we were very thorough in our research to cover all of them. And so all of Eric's calls are on YouTube, not anything, new. They're all there, but no one has actually cataloged them that we saw anyway, with any quality on YouTube. And Hackride or Casey came up with, or had found, a catalog of calls, but wasn't really sure on its reliability. And then just through some random occurrence, a friend of mine on Twitter started a conversation about how he had a catalog, and that is at Retro Gamer, at Mr. Axelstone on Twitter. And I was just like, yeah, man, sure. If you have something, pass it along. And he sent it to me, and it might be the most detailed catalog of every single Eric call that I had ever seen. So big shout out to that guy. He really helped us along the way. And so what Casey and I do is we each catalog our own spreadsheet of calls. I know we're totally turning it into a nerd show. And then we cross-reference them for the show.
And I'm happy to get the completionist as much as we can get. So the way it's cataloged, there hopefully we don't have one. There was one you were questioning that maybe there was something that slipped through because they were referencing something that we hadn't heard. So this is as complete as we can get. But unsure of that one where it was like, oh, actually, before we go too far, call 53. I meant to bring this up after the fact. I think Casey Day might have missed a thank you on the thank you tally on call 53. I made a note of that. That I believe I heard a thank you that wasn't thrown up on the tally, and I do enjoy that being part of the analysis because Eric is known.
I'll have to make a note of that.
Yeah, Eric is known as ungrateful. So that thank you tally, he's getting a bunch in a row where it seems grateful, saying thank you, and that does disappear at some point. We are in the angry Eric stage.
Yes, and it's really funny. I am I love the show. I just have so much fun with it. And when we came up with the idea of doing it, the whole big push for us to push it through for the both of us was that it was just going to be fun. And we have been just so incredibly grateful for all of the support that we've gotten. We've had a lot of people telling us that they enjoy it, which makes it so much, I don't know, more enjoyable to do when we get it. And we've had a pretty steady increase of viewership, which we are also very grateful for. But all of that to say is all of that, and it's still so much more fun than I even thought it would be. I can't explain it. It's just,
you have
it's a really weird thing.
who were in that time and place. I made a friend at the dive bar one night with a who me, and immediately his Howard senses went off. Are you doing Beetlejuice with that who me? Yes, I am doing Beetlejuice with that who me.
Yeah, and I've said it on I actually said it on the show once that who's high pitch has so many different meanings within my group of friends depending on the context. Who's high pitch can mean hello. It could mean, hey, it's been a while. We haven't talked. How's it going? And it could mean, hey, what are you doing? It could just, it's so funny. Just who's high pitch has just created its own phrase with so many different translations. And it's the same with Eric stuff. If you're a fan of Eric, it just means so many different things. It could mean love. It could mean hate, for that time of Howard Stern. But regardless, it meant you were listening because it just roped you in, whether you hated it or loved it.
I think that was
so
one
many
of
different
the
things.
most frequent replayed calls. Who's high pitch? Not only like it's got that was. I think it's the most enduring. That one when you. Yeah. I drop that regularly. I forget which. I think it was a creep off chat that someone was trying to run from the police, and I dropped a who's high pitch reference that really got Vinny going in a giggle fit because it's just so perfect. Who's high pitch? This is Kelly Clarkson. Oh, I should say it like this. And I forgot about some of those other legendary ones of Sal getting him to do the audition to be a Lollipop Guild.
Oh my God!
La 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 la.
No, you're tripping all over yourself. Do it like this. Tra la 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 la. Like that shift in his voice is what always gets me because he's trying to do the Howard impression. But the one that I forgot about. I don't know how in the world I forgot about it. And when I heard it, it just completely flooded my body with what a drug-like feeling was the Smurf cock call. How I forgot about that one, I don't know.
I did not remember the rub it against the phone either.
Take that thing out and jab me with that shrinky dink. I mean, I listened to that like it was like my first time, and I was just like a little boy at Christmas, laughing and enjoying myself so hard. I don't know how in the world I forgot that, but God, that's such a great call. And I even put a link to it on Twitter one time, and I just called it the Smurf cock call, and people knew what I was talking about. It was iconic.
The follow-up voicemail had me in stitches as well of Eric. As soon as that's over, if you guys pulled a prank on me, still trying, really wanting to believe that was whichever idol, Pickler. I forget which idol they were pretending to be, but he was still holding on to that. If that was a prank call, it could have been her, possibly.
If there's so many. I mean, he was so delusional there's delusional John, which is repulsive and disgusting, and there's delusional charming, like Eric. He had a charming, disillusionment about him, and the one that we always frequently reference, which is something that, man, listening to all this in succession just puts it all into like a new weird perspective. Was we keep referencing it when Eric tells the show that if by chance he happens to marry either Kelly Clarkson or Carrie Underwood, Howard and the gang would be invited to the wedding. I mean, wow. like I remember laughing, never really taking into consideration, wow, this guy really thinks this stuff is real, I don't know. I guess that just comes with age, but man, that one hit me hard. I can't ever stop thinking about that one whenever we, as like the go-to comparison, whenever we talk about how disillusioned he could be.
I love the early calls where Howard's like, all right, we need to get you a girl. We're going to send you to burn wards. We are going, and he just immediately started. Well, I don't know if immediately, there is time between these, pretty quickly after he started shooting for the stars of Idol.
It was pretty quick. Well, I mean, that's the reason he called in the first place, was to defend his first call was to defend Kelly Clarkson's honor because Howard had said she was fat. And knowing what we knew about Eric later, I think I even brought it up on the show once, was that this was Eric white knighting before the term white knighting was a term, but it was him trying to show off. And I think that the delusion with him was that in his little mind, Kelly Clarkson was going to get word of this, that someone defended her against Howard and was going to marry him, was going to fall in love and marry him. I mean, that's just my theory. But I mean, really, I think time proved that's exactly what he was thinking, in my opinion.
Yeah. How else would she be interested in him other than that start of, this man, he is standing up to Howard Stern, the great Howard, at the end of when there were 20 million people watching him or listening to him, rather. The serious years, that was kind of a clubhouse that we were in with our less millions of people. We decided we had many decades of sampling this for free, and now we're going to pay our premium. And Artie just let loose in those years. Actually, I remember when Rachel Hunter was supposed to be a guest, and Howard had a no cursing. Let's not go crazy. Let's just pretend we're on the radio, and we don't want to overdo it. And Rachel Hunter, she came in, but she didn't want to sign the camera release to be
That's right.
filmed. So she came in and then left, and that's when Howard dropped
the ban
F-bombs, C-bombs. He was pissed. That was the big release of let's not overdo it. Fucking Rachel Hunter.
Oh my God. I remember the word cunt got used a lot that day. And then like within hours, Sal made a parody song about, I don't remember what song it was, but I just remember that the chorus was, "She's only famous because she sucked Rod Stewart's cock." And I just remember just thinking, all right, I'm glad this happened.
Another Sal work that I will always remember was Katy Perry's first single, "I Kissed a Girl." And she came into the Stern show. She wasn't a big pop star yet, but she had the one hit. So she's trying to get out there. And, our buddy Sal, he works for us. He made a parody of your song. And she was like, I've heard it all. I've kissed a squirrel. And the horror when they played "I Pissed on a Girl" and I liked it for her.
I don't remember that, but I totally believe it. And I remember the song. I did not remember them playing it for her. Wow, that's
she was in studio once. I pissed on a girl. She seemed to be having a good time up until then, but then it was a hard pass for any future episodes.
Oh my God, that is I'm gonna have to find that because that sounds hilarious. And man, I could go on all day about the Robin songs. The Robin songs, I don't think those ever got enough credit because they only played like a 10-second clip of them.
Tits.
Yeah, black tits. And my favorite one that I remember just losing my mind laughing, like to the point where like my eyes were shutting while I was driving, was it was ROCK in the USA. Who's that? Was that John Cougar Mellencamp? But it was, "I want to put my COCK in your ASS." COCK. I just remember laughing so hard, like I couldn't contain, like, when your laughter goes silent after a while. That was what was happening. Like wheezing.
You get into Muttley and then you keep going, and even the Muttley
exactly
isn't working anymore.
And I remember I was driving while that happened. C-O-C-K in your ASS. I'm going to be singing that all day now. Damn it. Now it's going to be in my head.
Sal, he locale in of himself of being a degenerate with the kinds of porn that he would be
Yeah.
into. Oh, he called a porn star or something. I remember him getting in trouble, and he was like collecting the Sibian attachments afterwards and getting the girls to autograph it. At some point, Howard put the kibosh on that of like, Sal, you're being too creepy. You got to knock it off.
You know what's funny is Sal's arc in the show is pretty remarkable.
Like Richard, a caller at first, and the wins John's job, which is funny because it wasn't John's job. No, they created new jobs. John wouldn't have been able to do those. A lot of people rose through the ranks, but he failed at making Howard's potato. Grillo absolutely took pride in making Howard's potato, but Grillo didn't have that that quality of just being so dumb that he's I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but yeah, John, they gave a minimal amount of salary to do something and then be goofy at times. Grillo, no money.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and I think it really comes down to recognizing, like the show recognized value, where they just said, okay, well, look, this is all you can do. We don't think we can train you to do more, so this is going to be your salary and your job. But I think there were several examples of them recognizing someone's ability to do something else and then giving them more responsibility, like KC. Hey, Deadfool.
And he took to it. Thank you for the super chat, Deadfool, dropping in a $9.99 and a $49.99 super sticker. Oh, it's the hippo that turns into like a Voltron with his swivel chair. Thank you, Deadfool. Yeah. And I forgot this the other day. Electra made me some drops, so thank you for the super chat.
Thank you for the super chat.
That's great. That's great.
Thank you for that mustache. They are allowed here, but not on TS Luna's stream, which I did do a bonus episode of and came to a conclusion. Is it a bit? Is it not a bit? Because Marcus Pork, that guy who's autistic, it's like he's just too perfect with his comedy. He might be doing a bit. He might be severely autistic and just really funny at who he is.
Yeah. I remember when you played the second one of TS Luna, where I thought this one's less convincing. But that first one totally had me. If that was a bit, I was totally on board. It roped me in because God damn, that was funny. I can't tell you how many times I've watched that. Oh, hey, real quick, back to KC. So KC Armstrong is a great example, and I feel like the rivalry between John and KC is just not matched because of the show's ability to recognize that KC was a smart guy, a great on-air personality, and also like able to be a good worker. And so they gave him more responsibility. So he went from being an intern to being a producer on the show, which was something John never got. And at least
he had the opportunity to learn the way Casey did, but he just would not. Even the Lotus Notes, he can't claim to be a writer for the show because he never learned the Lotus Notes, the software that they used once they upgraded from physical pieces of paper and passing them along. Absolutely everyone on that staff could have been a writer. Just learn that software of Lotus Notes to send it over to Howard.
Yeah, and I mean that's so weird. And I've worked in offices before, and not only do they want ideas, but you also have to find out the right vehicle to deliver those ideas. And it's really funny that the vehicle to deliver those was that software, and he just never figured it out, but is never going to take responsibility for that. But anyway,
Another
oh
former intern, JD Harmeyer, created
yeah,
his own job because that was just an intern's job to pull clips, but it was just varying degrees of how good or bad it was, depending on who did it. But JD was so good at it, created his own job. And I love how much he downplayed himself when, like, there was some review. What is your job? I watch TV.
yeah, I watch TV. JD, and I mean, we talked about it a little bit on unboxing. JD came in as an intern, was
Well,
this
I don't know. I don't know.
a mumbling nerd, and he's been on the show for 22 years. I mean, that is just crazy, and I don't know that he's advanced beyond that job. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't, but still, that's just crazy.
I think
But
that's still what he's doing because he was so good at it. He comes
yeah,
in at ass in the morning. He's like the first one in the studio to start pulling clips for that day's show or the following. And he's also, I identify with both him and Sal of being a filthy pervert. He spent an ungodly amount of money on internet porn.
oh, that reveal was, that reveal is so odd if you understand the context of it. Like hearing that someone spent $100,000 on a hobby, let's just call it a hobby.
Was that the number?
It was 100 and something thousand. I think maybe
Oh,
115
yeah.
was it? I could be totally wrong about that, but for whatever reason, that's the number that comes to my mind. If I'm wrong,
I didn't remember the number. I wasn't thinking it was
yeah,
that high. God
that's
damn.
but that's the thing is like, I don't know. You could hear that and just be like, it's shocking, but you'd still be like, oh wow, man, maybe the guy's got a problem. But now think of 115 man. No, it's not 115. No. I'm probably confusing it with something else. There's no way it was that high. But whatever the number was, it was more than he was making in maybe like 6 months to a year of time at that moment. So imagine spending 6 months of your salary on porn. That's where it got weird. And whatever the number was, it was too much for JD, not too much for, somebody else. But that's what was crazy about it. But this all started. This all started with us talking about Sal, and I want to get back to Sal because I really want to make a point about Sal. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to go down another rabbit hole. Let's return to
No.
Sal before we get to another staffer.
Oh well, I was going to say okay. So Sal's arc with the show, in my opinion, is really compelling, and I think that in the way that we do unboxing Eric, I think that there is an unboxing Sal capability there, because his arc with the show is, I don't know, man, that is a real like epic story, if you think about it. And I could be wrong about this, and maybe no one else feels my opinion, but in the shadow of John, the show recruits what they consider to be talented contributors to the show who are not employed by the show. And, that's where we see this pool of talent, get sifted through into the contest. In the contest, Richard wins. And I believe, justifiably, I'm not going to say anything about that. I love Richard and Richard deserved it. But then the show says, well, Richard did win, but we recognize talent in this guy too, in Sal. And of course, they eventually also hire Shuley for a brand new position that isn't John's job, but they do sense that for John's purposes, they could probably use Sal too. But then going back to what you're saying, I'm sorry, it's so layered. It winds up not being John's job at all. It was just
it was a brand new job. It was an intern's duty that they just hired this guy who helps. Who is a buffoon at times and will ask stupid questions. And yeah, Richard and Sal never asked the stupid questions. I remember a few times where they had some freelancers. I forget the name of the guy that interviewed Darth Nihilus, but that Darth Nihilus was one that had me laughing for quite a while too.
Yeah, Wolfie. I am Darth Nihilus. If you ask stupid if you ask stupid questions and you get treated like an asshole, what was it? If you act like an asshole, you're going to get treated like an asshole.
And
But-
yeah, that's was a new position they were creating for Richard. Sal was so talented. They're like, okay, let's spring to hire him. And yeah, Shuley, he got on the news team. He's
Right.
described it as him being like the liaison between the actual news reporters. I love they got Steve Langford, a sensationalist news reporter from a current affair, a real investigative news reporter for this position. But the real reporters didn't know a lot of the Howard lore. So luckily, Shuley was on their radar to be like, hey, I could be part of the news team, and I know the Stern lore. I can help out Langford and them.
Yeah, that is okay. So that's another really interesting aspect. But they give Shuley a contract position as a teacher, as a consultant, basically, where they say we need you to educate the news team as to who these people are and their history with the show. What a fucking job. I mean, like, that's a dream job. I mean, just I can't imagine getting that phone call of, we're going to pay you to teach people about the whackpackers of Howard. I mean, that just sounds absurd to me, but I would jump at it. But okay, so back to Sal real quick. I'm going to try to get this point out as fast as I can. So you're right. They have a contest for a job. They call it John's job, but it's really just winning a salary and a job with the show that it begins to take its own form. And what they recognize is that Richard Christie's talent is the phony phone calls and the song parodies, which is not something John ever did. But they recognize a chemistry with Sal. So it is so many different steps leading into this guy is gone who is useless and does nothing. The guy who wants to take his place is talented. Then the guy who takes his place has this specific talent. And it turns out the guy competing also has a specific talent and also contributes a lot. Why, let's hire them both. So then Sal shows up on the show after getting a job and does not know how to act. And if you remember that,
I don't know how he existed as a stockbroker.
Yeah.
The way he's unable to function properly, be a good adult in the offices of the Stern Show. It's like, oh, was he a stockbroker for all those years? He is like a child in the way he acts so much of the time.
I could tell you, maybe somebody I know used to work in the finance field in the stockbroking industry. He was probably not that out of place in a stockbrokerage world. He probably got a lot of those bad habits being there, to be honest. You have to be boisterous, you have to be loud, you have to kind of make a scene at that time. It's not the same way now because everything's electronic, but to think about a normal, what people consider to be like a stereotypical office environment, and then compare it to a trading floor, are not the same thing. And they have very different qualities about what makes you good in one and what makes you good in the other. And I think being a stockbroker was probably a perfect job for Sal. But that being said, having to shift over to something that he believed was going to be the same environment, but turned out not to be, was a huge culture shock to him. And I've listened to some of it recently, and what's so funny is that Gary, when Sal would get corrected, who was the one person they constantly compare his behavior to? John. They say, Gary says, I'm not going to have another John working here. and
I got rid of one. We are not onboarding another one. We are going to improve you.
Specifically, and then when it was when I think it was when Sal did the whole thing about trying to stay at Howard's place for the night. Gary says, I'm not going to have another John here. When we hired John, he was an intern, but when he left, he thought that I was working for him. and he specifically says, I'm not having another John. Like, everyone's standard is John.
that was something that Gary had to try to nip in the butt, because one of the big things that Sal did as a caller was goof on Gary, and that carried over once he got the job. So Gary did have to put down his foot of like, okay, there's goofing on me, but I am your fucking boss.
I'm
Sal.
your boss, and this is an office, and there are young female interns in this office, and you will get us into trouble, and we can't have that. I mean, like, they laid out so many standards by which a reasonable person would be like, hey, I understand. If I expect to get a paycheck, I'm going to be on my best behavior. But not him. You know, he got caught jerking off in the bathroom, you know, saying inappropriate things around the college female interns, talking to guests.
This is Sal Governale.
Yes. And then it all leads up to that, of course. But talking to the guests was one of the craziest ones, because he tried to talk to Gene no, it wasn't Gene. It was somebody else. But
one of the guys from Kiss, and Audrey Hollander. She was a filthy, dirty porn star. She did a lot of degrading stuff, and I remember Howard being upset of him reaching out to her. And but I just respect what she does. The fact that she will put herself, she will do that.
And then I remember listening to the arguments, and those were so fascinating because he defends himself in a way of saying that he is entitled now as a member of the Howard Stern show to perks of talking to celebrities or trying to get gigs, all of the shit that John did. And there's this moment where he says to Howard, when Howard's berating him, he says, so I can't talk to the guest? And Howard says, no. You cannot. And just like lays it out, like all of they draw this line in the sand of him just saying, oh well, I can't do this. No, you can't. No. And it ends, but then there's another arc there with Sal in which he corrects his behavior. They actually trained him to be a good employee. There's so many things. I could go on all day. Sal is actually one of my favorite characters of the show because I loved tracking his history and his progress, because it was always changing. Sometimes he was good, sometimes he was bad, but it was always extreme. And anyway, all right, sorry. I wanted to make that point because I wanted other people to hear it.
Have you seen the Pelican Brief, that symposium of when Howard made that big turn?
Oh, yeah.
So that's something that really struck me, that for years, Howard told the staff, do not bug celebrities, do not bug the guests. And then his big point in there, we need to get celebrities in. Go bug them online. Why aren't you bugging the celebrities on the internet?
Not just bug them with your own identity, bug them with other people's identity too. And oh my God, when I heard that, it broke my heart. It really broke I was like, man, I can't do this anymore. This is dumb. I was
already out at that point. It was gradual once Artie left that it wasn't a conscious decision. Like a lot of the Benji, Elisa Jordana stuff was brand new to me. Once she became a absolute wacko to be looked into, and there's a compilation of those on YouTube, and I could not listen to those for long. The Benji Vortex, as they called it, that's what eventually got me to be like, you know what? I don't need Sirius satellite radio.
Benji's a fascinating character in himself. I did talk a little bit about this on Unboxing Eric, in that he is apparently, I don't know any proof of it, but other than all of the recommendations on the show, he is supposedly a great comedy writer. But
that's what everyone says. And it is two different abilities, being a comedy writer and a comedy performer. Because when he goes, when he goes to perform his shtick, no, I'm not on board with it the vast majority of the time. But you, according to everyone, we've both heard the Stern staffers say he's an incredible writer. He's really the one in the Jackie seat more than anyone else. Actually, no, he ran concurrent with Jackie, didn't he? I believe they put Benji when Jackie was still there. So they just doubled up the writers, and then Artie, as he said, that position of Jackie of writing on the spot, Artie was terrible at. If they wanted him that specific job of writing off the cuff, he was able to perform, but writing, nope. Artie was like, nope. If that's what the job is, I'm fucked. But they modified it because he just fit in, and the everyman. Howard lost that everyman, so Artie was able to be that everyman for us in that studio.
Artie's quick wit was just phenomenal. I mean, just unparalleled. I can never imagine in my life being that quick and that witty as he was. It was amazing. Jackie, it's funny. Everyone feels like there has to be a camp in which you like one and hate the other. I do not feel that way. I feel like everyone had their pros and cons. Oh, wait, Benji. Yeah, we're talking about Benji, but yes, and that's funny because Artie was the opposite of Benji, in which he said, "I'm much better on my feet. I'm not a great writer," and Benji supposedly is this great writer, but as soon as he talks, it's just the opposite of funny, and it's really funny. I've had moments where I think that stuff I've done contributed to shows or art I do or something like that. I feel confident about it. I think, oh, this is funny. And then I get a report back. Yes, this was funny. I used this because this was funny. Hey, do you want to talk? And I freeze up and I always think, don't be Benji. Don't be Benji. Don't be the guy that they say does funny work off camera, off camera or off air. And then is a total asshole on the air. That's the thought that always goes through my head.
It's better to be a Fez than a Benji, which is a rabbit hole I'm just starting to go down now. I didn't listen to Opie and Anthony at the time they were on, and I didn't listen to Ron and Fez at the time they were on. Blind Mike's Why Are You Laughing series. He did a couple episodes on Ron and Fez, and I've started going down that rabbit hole on YouTube of Ron and Fez. And Fez, just at some point didn't talk.
I was not exposed to Ron and Fez. I've heard of them. I've heard nothing but good things and people admiring them. I don't know if that was just something I missed out on or if they weren't in my market. I just never heard of them.
They were in my market. There was Ron and Fez, Don and Mike. I just didn't get into them at the time. I think also it was part of the backwoods area that I came from. Going back up to that part of Maryland and talking to some of my relatives, I realized, you're not one for the gays. So I believe the Fez character when in the car with other people, and it would be all right to listen to Stern. But in backwoods Maryland with these people who don't like these type of people, I can that's I remember why I didn't get on the Fez train.
Well, I've never heard them. So you're saying one of them was a character? Fez was a character?
It's best to go into the Blind Mike Why Are You Laughing episode. That really kicked off my interest. He was a character, but then basically just stopped being the character. He was basically just him under a different name at some point once the character and the person just merged into one.
Oh man. Okay. I'm going to have to check that out. Now, I've never heard them. I know nothing of them other than Rocco talks about admiring them and growing up on them. He's done it talking about what's the word I'm looking for? I'm sorry. Why am I blanking on that word? Jesus.
We both get our mind farts and our mouth farts and our butt farts.
Motivated him to have the bedabbler character. He mentioned Ron and Fez once, and I was like, I don't know who that is, but anyway, sorry. Now my brain's tired from having to search for a fucking word.
So we'll just go down another rabbit hole of.
Please.
You said Artie was quick on his feet. That's why I was so excited at the time of the AA show. Artie and Anthony, two of the most quick-witted guys around. And Artie was just in no shape. He was in a dark place. Another reason why the Joe Matarese Fixing Joe pilot is incredible, because he invited on the best quick-witted guys in radio of that time, Anthony, Jim Norton, and Artie. And if he would have steered into it, that pilot could have gotten picked up. But Joe Matarese was just so upset of them hijacking his show that he started like flipping through his phone during that pilot episode, which he spent a pretty penny on.
So it's funny. I was also not privy to Opie and Anthony until, very recently. I knew who they were because Howard always talked about them. But I again, they might not
drank
have been
the
in my
Howard
market.
Kool-Aid. The Howard Kool-Aid said Opie and Anthony, fuck those guys. And I wish I would have been listening to them both and not drinking the Kool-Aid, because they are amazing. Louis C.K. What's fun about Louis C.K. coming in there is you hear his early developments of his bits that went on his hour-long stand-up specials. Patrice O'Neill, DeRosa and Bill Burr show, Uninformed, like they would give some of the side characters on Opie and Anthony a show on the weekend. The Black Phillip show with Patrice O'Neill, where he talks about relationships. Love hearing Patrice talk about relationships. I don't always agree with him, but he definitely has his point of view, and it's a very sound point of view that he explains. And I really wish that the DeRosa Bill Burr show would have had more episodes. I love those two together. So that's I remember going down that rabbit hole soon after they broke up, and I guess I wasn't listening to Stern at the time, but I was still drinking the Kool-Aids. Fuck those guys. Oh, they're not a thing anymore? All right, let's check them out since they're not a thing anymore.
I think I just wasn't exposed to them. Not for any reason other than maybe they just weren't. Maybe I was in school at the time or something like that. I think they might have been in my market, but I just never listened. And I probably was drinking the Howard Kool-Aid too. But you want to read this?
Thank you for the $1.99 super chat, Nimrob. Fez is one of his all-time favorite homosexuals. So there is an endorsement from Nimrob to go down that rabbit hole as well.
I'm going to have to check that out.
As I mentioned, Why Are You Laughing is a good jump-off point to get you familiar with what's going on. And I'm really enjoying Blind Mike's coverage of the history of comedy. There was an episode I was like, oh, I'd love to do an Andy Kaufman show with you. But, oh, never mind. Of course you did, Andy Kaufman, because that's one that I'm quite familiar with, the career of Andy Kaufman, and he's up there. I love the odd shit that he did that is like when someone does something unique like that, and then we're several decades down the line, and a lot of it is just cliche of so many people trying to do the same thing.
Yeah. We were originally talking. We're talking about Anthony and Artie, the Anthony and Artie show. I didn't have much exposure to Anthony Cumia before that, and I remember just kind of thinking, oh, who's this guy? And then watching it I remember just feeling so good and thinking, man, I sure hope Artie can stay sober and that they can make this work. If you've ever seen the Gilbert Gottfried episode of the Anthony and Artie show, they just go on this riff with Gilbert about old TV shows, big surprise, but it is so funny. They just go from one topic to the next topic to the next topic, all three of them killing in succession for a solid hour. I recommend everyone go check that out. And I remember laughing so hard at that. And then I think it might have been like 2 or 3 weeks later, Anthony shows up by himself and says, Artie's no longer part of the show, which of course everyone probably expected. But I remember just thinking that could have been such magic if it would have worked. And the thing about the Joe the show, the one you just mentioned, who's the guy? Joe Matarese.
Joe Matarese.
Yeah.
Joe Matarese, the prime example of don't fix yourself. If you have a wife who is a therapist and gets you on all the right medication, according to people who saw him back in the day, he was a good comic and he was going to be something big, but you got to go the Attell route and never fix your problems, and you will be a fantastic comedian.
I hadn't heard about that until maybe like a year ago, that thing, and you could find it on YouTube, and I watched it, and I remember thinking it wasn't even all that bad. Or I'm sorry, I should say how I expect comedians to bust each other's balls backstage. In my mind, it's brutal. And that, you only do that if you expect it in return with another comedian. And I felt like that's what they were doing, in my opinion. I didn't feel like they were attacking him. I thought they were treating him like a fellow comedian and busting his balls. And he just
throws in the towel. He outright says, boy, you guys are really quick. And to me, it's a muscle. When I was thrown into that situation with other comics, I succeeded. And it's a muscle that you work it out, and it gets better over time, the more you do it. Whereas Joe, he was just outright admitting, I'm not quick. How are you guys doing that? Because they're comedians, Joe. And quick thanks to New Girl for the $1.99 over there in that UK money. Sorry I'm late. Can't wait to watch back. And we've got another super chat jingle.
Thanks for the super chat, super chat, super chat.
Thanks again for DJ Electra for the 3 super chat jingles that she gifted me.
Hi, New Girl. Thank you. But that was a weird one, because I'm not a stand-up comedian. I don't consider myself in comedy, but I've had to have moments. I think I've pretty much been outed, that I've been doing some shows with some favorite potatoes and puppets recently, and those fuckers are so quick. I just cannot compete with that, and I ultimately just have to remind myself, you're not comedy, don't try. And but I also don't wither, and that's what's funny, is that I felt like somebody who had the chops and the pedigree, the history, the resume of being a stand-up comedian, to hear that, hear them bust on his balls, and he just was like, you could literally just see the wind getting knocked out of him, and just being like, wow, everybody hates me.
Yeah.
They don't like
didn't
me.
take it as a
I
ball
remember
busting.
feeling bad for him, and I was like, man, wow, that's not what I expect the comedian's response to be,
Your audio is starting to get a little garbled again. But Joe Matarese did not take it as a ball busting. He took them as haymakers, and he was just unable to keep up with them and get in there. He would have been a great straight man, like that show where he's filling the Opie role of running the show, of being the anchor of what those guys are goofing on. That would have been a good show, but it was a pilot to have rotating people in, not to be the showcase of these 3 all-time greats.
Yeah, and it's hard if you, I don't know, man. It's so weird, and I wasn't sure if I felt bad, if I felt, if I felt like I should have laughed at it. It was weird, but I do feel like if your entire livelihood is consists of this talent, why would you fuck with the talent? I read a book once by David Lynch, and I'm a big David Lynch fan, and he wrote in a book that he was feeling mentally troubled, and he felt like he was having some possible mental issues, and he went to a psychologist or a therapist, and in the first meeting with that therapist, he said he started talking and then stopped and said, is there any chance that if I continue with this therapy that it could alter my creativity? Because I do rely on a lot of issues with depression, contributing to my creativity. is there any chance that my creativity could be changed? And apparently the therapist said, well, yeah, sure, there's a chance. And that he said, I'll pay you for the hour. He stood up, shook the guy's hand and said, but I'm not going to do this, and walked out. And, some part of me really respects that, that he was like, well, if my livelihood depends on this, I'm not going to change it. And so you get the opposite of that, where Joe Matarese says, nope, I'm going to start feeling better about myself, changing everything and completely change up the game plan of what my comedy is based on. And then it doesn't work out. I feel like there was a real cause and effect there that seems very clear to most people. But I guess you just got to do what you got to do and take the consequences for it.
And it's good for him for getting his mind in the right place. But continuing to pursue stand-up comedy has made us all laugh at him, not laugh at what he's doing.
Yeah, and that's I guess I'd missed that point, or missed speaking that point, is that maybe you have to consider doing something else, and he hasn't. And that's just weird. Yeah, he's not a funny guy.
Apparently he's a funny guy when he was I would love to see that early material. I've never heard that early material because there are people who saw him in like 2010 or whenever he first started doing it, and I didn't keep up with stand up. I think I know moving to Los Angeles messed me up with like I was getting in a groove. There was a couple of people in Baltimore who said that it sounded like I was finding my voice, which is the biggest compliment that you could have. But getting out of that groove, being much happier in Los Angeles than I was in Baltimore. I never was able to get back on that bike the way I was starting to put the pieces together there in the home state of Maryland. And I like my tight 1 minute set now. It's more performance art than it is stand up. Put me somewhere in the middle of it. It used to be my opener, but I was like, put me in the middle of a bunch of showcase people. Let me tell you a little about myself. Let me tell you a little about myself. Let me tell you a little about myself. Here's something completely different for a minute. Help get you back into it after a little bit of sameness of the barrage of let me tell you a little about myself.
Yeah. It's funny. I think I actually might have seen Joe Matarese live once. I'm not certain because I don't remember the name, but a long time ago I actually saw Artie live, and I'm about maybe 19 years ago, and there was a person that opened for him that I don't remember the person's name, but in hindsight I do believe it was Joe Matarese, and if it was him, he was funny. And that's the hardest part, I guess. The weirdest part is that if you have this reputation, like Jay Leno, there's a great reputation. There's a great example. People said that Jay Leno was this great comedian, edgy comedian, did something different, did something unique, and was considered one of the best. But he saw a paycheck in monotony and being family friendly, and he took it.
And pleasing the network.
He was
a network guy, and he was happy to be a network guy and do what they wanted. Because the Jay Leno interviews stink. It's what they turned the Tonight Show into. You go back to the 70s Carson episodes when they were 90 minutes, and the first guest would always stick around for the second guest and have some interaction. Those were great interviews, but it became too friendly to their guests, to where they weren't. It was just come on, promote your stuff, tell a quick story, and then you're out of here. We'll get the second guest in here.
Yeah, and some part of me doesn't really hate Jay Leno, despite the fact that I am kind of fight the man, funny before money, because of the fact that it seemed to please him, and he did it for a long time. So he didn't hate it, and he was good at it. He saw that he could do it. He lived with himself doing it. He got the paychecks, obviously. And, well, good for him. But to go back to Joe Matarese, is it seems like that decision was taken from him because of his choice of paths he took, where he was trying to be something and now unwittingly he is something else, you know, with the comedy not hitting the marks because of
He thought he could do both. He thought he
the
could be
medicine. Yeah,
mentally well and be a great
yes,
comic, which a
exactly.
lot of people can't.
No, and that's what's funny is, yeah, man, I'm all about reveling in the darkness. I you know, I can't, I don't, I feel like to be a stand-up comedian, maybe I respect the medium a little too much, more than your average person, but I feel that it takes a higher degree of intelligence than the average person and a higher degree of mastery of the English language than the average person. And to that, I feel like it is only intended for smart but damaged people. You know, I feel like there's a very, very narrow scope of person that makes a successful stand-up comedian, in my opinion.
And
You know?
it is flooded with people who are, yeah, just bigger fans than they are talented at it. And out in Los Angeles, a lot of actors whose manager and agent told them, do stand up, get your name out there and do stuff while I don't have anything for you.
Yeah, yeah. That's crazy. I respect it too much. I've had moments where I thought that I'd give it a try just for the fun of it. And when it came down to actually having to write it, I was like, no, I feel like I'm doing something disrespectful. I respect
Well,
it too much.
have you ever heard Louis C.K.'s advice on how to be a great stand-up?
No.
Be terrible at it for 10 years. And then maybe you'll start being good at it.
So I actually, one time with a friend, we kind of told ourselves that we were going to do stand up at an open mic. And I said, I know I'm not going to be good. I'm not going to have any expectation to be good. So I'm going to get up and tell the worst possible jokes I can because I want to know what it feels like to bomb. And I started writing terrible jokes, like jokes that I did not expect a laugh. And you know, like jokes that were going to completely polarize the audience. And I wrote them all out and I told them to my friend, and he was so against it. He was like, this is going to be so awful and painful to listen to. I just don't want you to do it. And he convinced me not to, and I never did. But I wish I could remember the jokes. I mean, like they were so bad that like you can't even call them jokes. They were just statements of fact, and then me just trying to be as offensive as possible because I wanted to know what it felt like to bomb.
In doing some of my performance art type stuff, I had one of those sets where it's purposely very dull. And there was one guy in the audience who was losing his mind laughing, realizing what I was doing.
Oh really?
With that Andy Kaufman inspiration of what I was doing. There was one guy getting pissed off.
Yeah, see, that was my fear.
Angry at what I was doing.
That I was going to piss people off. And I was like, I can handle silence. Silence isn't a big deal. Booze, I don't know that I can handle. If I were to like get hissed off a stage, that might actually be a little scarring. But you know, I guess there's still time. Maybe I'll still do it one day.
Oh, looks like we've got some breaking news. I've seen it by a couple of people here, Nimrob and Uncle Jack. It looks like we've got to go to Rumble for the potato now. It's it's a tough world.
He's appealed it. I saw on Twitter he appealed it, but they played John's movie last night. But they did it members only on YouTube and on Patreon. But there's tits in the movie, and I don't know why they only struck Cardiff, because it got streamed also on Bedabbler Network, but they only struck Cardiff and they nuked his channel, and he appealed it. And I can't imagine that one pair of tits would make you lose your entire channel forever.
Daisy's tits have been on her channel a bunch of time, and the Venice Healer is still there.
Ah, man. Oh, she's not monetized though, right?
I don't know. I've never seen super chats pop up, so maybe she is not monetized.
Yeah, that really, really sucks. I don't think he deserves to have his channel taken down. Maybe some kind of punishment, for a week or something. But that's ridiculous. And what sucks
I've
also is
decided absolutely no watch alongs, and the same thing with Nimrob and what channel? Cut of the Jib. They do that over on Rumble with the watch alongs, because even with the clips, I was discussing with Spurg Snake of doing a Tales from the Crypt episode, and it's like we're gonna have very light clips or no clips at all because of the trouble I had with successful failures, getting the thumbs up and then getting taken down worldwide.
Oh man, that's terrible. That really sucks. And just they even talked about it on the show where they said, "Oh, there's tits. Do we need to do something?" And they're all like, "No, we don't." They didn't expect it. They didn't expect it to happen. And it sucks, man. It really sucks.
There is, I believe, exactly one set of boobs, maybe two sets of boobs in that one scene. But for something that's attempting to be an '80s boner comedy, not much bonerage going on there. The audio commentary, according to the director, I read a review online that said the commentary, audio commentary on the DVD is more informative than it has any right to be. I'm like, well, I need to buy that. According to the director, they did film a scene inside Scores with a lot of nudity and cut it for some reason. And I'm like, well, that was the scene to make this attempt to be a boner comedy, at least.
That's funny. I had never seen the movie before. Last night was my first time watching it, and my God, it's terrible. I mean, it is so bad. Not even a single funny joke.
I was when I initially wanted to start streaming, I wanted to do a show, Hindsight Rewrite, where I do Red Letter Media Mr. Plinkett style review, and then a last segment of what I would do instead, while trying to keep as many elements as I can. So this should have been One Too Many should have been Stuttering John attempting to be a producer more than a lead actor, because like I wouldn't cast myself in the lead role unless budget said absolutely fuck, you can't get an actor. But you get a name actor, usually you get more money coming in. But anyways, it should have been Dietrich Bader in my mind, with a little wink to his Office Space character of two chicks at the same time. There's absolutely no reason the movie needed to take place in New York, because they shot it in Los Angeles, except for a couple of scenes. The way that John's character is trying to be an actor, and it's like filling in for a shift. That's what the fuck? You're filling in for a shift for your buddy? That's not how acting works. Unless they would have made the Tony and Tina's wedding parallel like a big part of the movie. There was no reason to put it in there other than, well, this is what happened in my life, which a lot of writers have trouble with. Of this is exactly how it happened to me, so this is exactly how it's going to happen in the movie. Like, no, when I'm doing stuff based on real life, immediately I'll start changing things so I don't get wrapped up in this is the way it was. This is what it should be in the movie. Because no, what happened in real life. Same thing with the Steel Toe Lifetime movie. Anthony Cumia and Carl Hamburger, they're one character. Gino and Keanu, they're one character. I haven't been able to take as many notes since I started that, but I was having fun starting to write the Steel Toe Lifetime original movie.
I recently had something happen to me. It's a very long story, but I have tried to relay the story to other people because I just think it's an interesting story. And I have said, hey, let me tell you about that, because it's been an interesting conversation topic at like parties. The story that I tell is so unbelievable that I see people like their face kind of glaze over and they're like, no, this isn't real. He's exaggerating. When I swear everything about it is real and it really happened. So it's funny, like you're saying, the writer, I've actually had to dull down the story and change it up a little bit in order to make people more interested in it and that it's real, or convince people
for
that
a
it
party
really happened.
audience. Maybe that's part of your stand-up set as
Yeah.
is, because it's expected that you take some liberties for comedy's sake in your
Yeah.
story.
And this story that I have is not a comedy story. It's actually a very terrible story.
It is
But
not the comedy.
yeah, at the end of it is there's a little bit of comedy, but it goes on and on where I'm like, okay, so then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And I literally have just seen people's eyes be like, okay, right, sure. And I'm like, oh, fuck, well, now I have to lie because this story's too unbelievable. So I wonder if anyway, exactly what you're saying about real life is that I feel like maybe there could have been some things about that in John's story, but I totally picked up on that too, about the shift thing where he's like, okay, you need me to go do this for you? All right, let me go. I'm going to go down to the audition office for my 8 to 5 shift. And yeah, that was totally absurd and ridiculous. And it also reeks of someone talking about something they know nothing about.
He knew the Tony's and Tina's wedding, so it was jammed in there, and that actually is something that you kind of get people to replace your shift, because that's an ongoing production with a large cast. So he just took that knowledge and applied it to being a birthday clown, which the only birthday clown that I knew in Los Angeles, they were into clowning. They were that wasn't a side gig. Well, it was a side gig, because everyone in Los Angeles has a side gig, but it wasn't something that they were like, I can't make it. Hey, can you do this? You got to go to clown college to be a good clown. Steve-O will tell you that.
I assume there's some sort of skill involved with it.
You got the balloons, you got the juggling, and quick thanks to Mr. Blue Sky for the 20 knock. It sucks that it costs money to chat now. You don't need to pay money to chat, but I do appreciate you paying money to chat. And the interview show is less interactive with the chat, because it starts to malfunction my brain when I try to monitor the chat as much as I do on the TikTok show. And we do have one more. Thank you, jingle.
Your super chat made my day. Cheers and hip, hip, hooray.
Is the lyric in that jizzing hip, hip, hooray?
I'll have to check that out. Or I could just play that one more time. Is that jizzing?
Your super chat made my day. Cheers and hip, hip, hooray.
Cheers. Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers and hip,
and
hip, hooray.
Hooray.
Okay. Jizzing hip, hip, hooray. I mean, brilliant. Straight out of Bob Dylan's mouth.
The excuse me while I kiss this guy misheard lyrics.
Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, so John's movie also, like, it's really funny. It is the opposite of funny. There's nothing funny about it. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. I don't even know where to start with, like, actually criticizing it. But then the end is like a total fuck you to the investment of watching it, where they build up all these characters and he doesn't even end up with the girl. I'm sorry, spoiler alert. If you plan on watching John's movie, he
ends up with his real life wife. Like, that's supposed to mean something to us, that he ends up with his real life wife. And in my version of that, at the end, yes, the two ladies he's in a threesome with, they go off with each other, and then he finds someone who was part of the crew that he was working on behind the scenes. They start hitting it off at a diner, and she talks about being bisexual and wanting to be with multiple people, and it ends on a "here we go again" instead of just the nothingness. That was my hindsight rewrite. Was I'm getting to know this lady. I like her. Oh, she's into both. Here we go again.
I just, the guy is just an endless well of bad decisions. Just, I mean, it was so awful, and then it just has this even more awful ending that's just a big middle finger to your efforts in trying to make it to the end of this abortion. And he ends up just going on a date with this lady who was not invested in any way in the movie, and just, oh my God, I don't know.
She was just
I don't get
yeah,
that,
she
man.
was just there. There was
Just
no reason
there. Yeah.
for her to be there at the end to be like, that you could be my boyfriend, maybe, possibly. Let's go out. No, other than it's his real life wife. Like, that's if it was, a Hollywood power couple, that's a wink you could have made of a fucking ending of, oh look, the real life couple are getting together. But no one knew who Susanna was.
No, man, what a just awful in every layer of of movie, just awful in every possible way. That ending, it blew my mind in the worst way, because I couldn't get over how stupid of a person would write that. Like, you've tortured your audience this whole time with this unfunny nonsense, and now the one redeeming possible thing that could tell the story in a good way, you throw that out too. And oh my God, it was just, it's really funny. Like
I think it
depth
might
of
be
his
better than the Angry Video Game Nerd movie. That's the one that got me. Once I saw the Angry Video Game Nerd movie, that's when I started writing, and that was the first one I did a hindsight rewrite of. I've got a lot more notes on that one than I do One Too Many. It's as long as Raiders of the Lost Ark. It is like a 2-hour fucking movie. It's I will. I think I'll give John credit for that. One Too Many, not as bad, as unfathomably bad as the Angry Video Game Nerd movie. I'm gonna say that. I'm dying on that hill. It is better than at least one movie.
I have not seen that, but I believe you, because I was never really a fan of Angry Video Game Nerd. He's obnoxious and annoying, a lot like John.
Someone who I also got familiar with, like him and the Nostalgia Critic, it was like 2013, 14 when I was starting to get familiar with them. Well, I guess a little before his movie started filming, and I was like, oh, this is neat. It was like the first crowdfunding of a film, and oh boy, he's a huge fan of film, James Rolfe from the Angry Video Game Nerd. But if you're a fan of film, why would you do that to it? Oh, good God!
Was it like just a vanity project?
Yeah, complete vanity project. And there are so many things jammed in there that were in jokes from when they were in college that should have been edited out. He ran out of money and wasted it on such stupid shit, especially going to Los Angeles. He was playing a film director he's a Philadelphia guy, definitely Pennsylvania, I think Philadelphia. And he was like, oh, we're making a movie, so we're going to go to Los Angeles to film it. No, that's, you need a Hollywood accountant. They wrung him dry of that crowdfunded budget so quick, because he did not have a nice accountant like with the Spinal Tap movie, who, according to the creative accounting, Spinal Tap still hasn't turned a profit decades later. When you have just a guy off the street doing that Hollywood accounting, you don't know how to take advantage of those tax breaks and shit that they do, and that creative accounting to help stretch that money.
You're making me think of the Radioactive Man movie on The Simpsons. There's a puffy pants tax.
I mean, a not wearing puffy pants tax.
Well, the sign that says "Welcome Hollywood Money." Oh, that's something else. So I know that when we talked about, all the rabbit trails we were probably going to go down, I know you're a Simpsons fan, but it is kind of funny that all of our in jokes are about obscure things that nobody else gets. But I am a huge Simpsons fan. And one thing that I have loved about the Dabbleverse is I occasionally drop in very random Simpsons quotes, and it seems like the people closest to me, or like, like on social media, people who I frequently chat with, we've never talked about the Simpsons, but I can drop in a random Simpsons quote and people will appreciate it and then throw one back at me. And sometimes it gets so deep where I'm like, I don't even know as much as these people.
I have an encyclopedic knowledge. Nimrod dropping an up and at them.
Up and at them. And at them.
Better. And what's funny is that joke was based on I'll be back. Arnold Schwarzenegger had a very hard time saying I'll be back. Can I say I will be back? No. It's got to be I'll be back.
Yeah. It's funny. Now I'm blanking on the quote earlier about how Radioactive Man was a ripoff. It's the comic book guy giving an explanation about how he was a ripoff of another comic book character. It's Bart telling Milhouse how he's a ripoff of another comic book character, and says his catchphrase was "up and let's go." I'm sorry, I can't think of the character, but he's saying that Radioactive Man and Fall Out Boy were ripoffs of another character, but I can't remember those characters' names. Somebody out there knows.
I just got the gag in my mind where Principal Skinner is over the intercom announcing that there will be auditions for Radio Man, and Nelson, Radioactive Man.
Stupid. Is Radioactive Man stupid?
And he takes a pause. I shouldn't have heard that.
Yeah. And then and all the hats fly up, and also the air
conditioning. We will be fixing the air conditioning soon. Mrs. Hoover, there's a dog in the air vents. Ralph, do you remember when you said Snagglepuss was mowing the lawn? or no, do you remember when you said Snagglepuss was outside? He was mowing the grass. Or no, he was going to the bathroom.
Man, and I just love it that I at any moment I drop, on Twitter, someone will, it's usually some troll or something says something, and I'll just drop my cat's name is Mittens on someone, and then somebody else gets it, or my cat's breath smells like cat food. And I just get all these people saying, ha ha ha, that's funny, I love it, and then dropping something else, and we go down these deep rabbit holes, and I love that so much. It was something that just, I don't know, it leads us all to realize that we have always had these weird same senses of humors that only evolved. We went from Simpsons to Howard Stern to whatever happens after that, but it seems that everyone's base, if you like this stuff now, you by implication were a Simpsons fan.
I hit my Wookiee.
Go banana. And how many people have used the meme on John of me fail English? That's impossible. But I noticed that the other day where someone made some kind of comment about KB, and I just wrote on as a reply to someone's post, I was like, God, when did this guy turn into Abe Simpson? And so many people just flooded with Abe Simpson memes and comments, and they're like, oh my God, he is Abe Simpson. And I was like, he's rambling and just always angry. So I tied an onion to my belt.
They used to have bumblebees on money in those days. Give me 5 bees for a nickel, you'd say. So where was I? Anyways, I had an onion on my belt, which was the style at the time. I remember how that ended. You couldn't get the white ones because of the war. All you could get were those big yellow ones.
One of my favorite episodes is the Lemon of Troy, the one about the lemon tree, and
shake harder, boy.
Shake harder, boy. And at the end, they're constantly showing the parallels of of Springfield and Shelbyville, and there's a Abe Simpson parallel. And Abe is telling all this group of kids sitting under the lemon tree about how there was a big war over the lemon tree and we won. And then it shows the parallel, the Shelbyville Abe Simpson, and he says, and that's when I don't remember if he says we gave away the tree or
They took the wicked tree.
Yeah, he goes,
it was a wicked tree.
Because
Like
it was haunted.
Yeah, they let it happen.
Yeah, because it was haunted. And that line gets me every time. Now let's all have a cold glass of turnip juice.
The different executive producers, that's where I learned to follow, like because Oakley and Weinstein, they actually grew up in the same area that I did, that comedy team, and it's actually unfortunately them, the episode that people point to. It was a holdover from their season, the season 9 episode with the fake Principal Skinner. That's become the one that everyone points to of like this was it. This was the mark of the end of the good years. And unfortunately, it wasn't the season 9 executive producer. It was our buddies Oakley and Weinstein, who had a bunch of fun episodes. The David Merkin years, I think 5 and 6, it was especially nihilistic. The Halloween episodes actually frightened me a little bit as a kid.
Really?
And the one where they eat the kids, that was actually Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. The kids who watched that when it was new were scared of the kid catcher, because it's like a danger you can parallel yourself to in that age and time frame of he's catching kids. They're eating kids. Oh, fuck.
It's funny, the one quote from that sketch that lingers in my mind was Uter saying, eating the food in the cafeteria, and goes, "Ooh, das ist gut, nein?" And I don't know why, but that just became like a joke with me and my friends in school, where we would just like eat something and go, "Das ist gut, nein?" And it was from that one where they're eating the kids. There's no reason for that. It's totally stupid, but we would always quote the stupidest lines. I don't know that I was the only one. I'm pretty sure there were other groups of friends in schools that would try to just say the most obscure of Simpsons lines, and try to puzzle other people. And then when they didn't know it, you'd call them stupid. That was what my group of friends was.
You don't speak our Simpsons language, which Casey Day doesn't. He doesn't get the big book of British smiles and the Lisa needs braces. Over on Spurgtopia, Sam V and I went back and forth on those gifts for quite a while. And Casey Day on the big book of British smiles was like,
the big book of British smiles. That's also right before one of the classic bits of this age progression software will show her what her teeth will look like.
Cool.
By 17, there's a tooth going through her upper lip.
Cool. She'll be a freak. And Rini X, being a little older than us, can confirm that Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was scary as fuck with the kid catcher. So the eating of the kids, that one frightened me, indeed. The going back and watching The Critic, Al Jean and Mike Reese were the big creative force behind the first season. The Critic I loved at the time. I still like it. I didn't love it on this recent watch through. Who else? Oh, Sam Simon. The full story seems to be alluded to, but has never come out. It sounds like Sam Simon was a driving force turning The Simpsons into a full cartoon rather than a sitcom that's animated.
Yeah. There might have been a time in my life where I knew the whole story. But man, that's interesting. Yeah, so Matt Groening had the idea. Sam Simon had, I think maybe Sam Simon had the money, and then David Cohen
James L. Brooks was another one who
And James L.
might have,
Brooks, yeah.
he was. I think Sam Simon was still up and coming at that time. I think he might have been on Taxi. James L. Brooks was definitely from Taxi, but he was the most established of the executive producers. And A. Smith, I've come to believe that Howard rented Ralph out to Sam Simon. That was a weird relationship that those two had.
I that's where I started thinking that maybe stuff on the Howard Stern show wasn't real, that they claimed was real. The Sam Simon Ralph thing was this. I'm like, I don't even know the word for it. It was so odd. And the one thing that I remember where I remember feeling gross hearing about it was when John Stamos did Howard's show and said that he visited Sam and Ralph, and he said, and tells the story that Ralph had gone there on vacation or something and just stayed. It just stayed. And Sam Simon was like, yeah, sure, you could stay. And then at one point, Ralph gives John a tour of Sam's house and referred to things as our, meaning, hey, that's our car, that's our stuff, that's ours. And that John said that he was too embarrassed to ask, what do you mean by our? And I like, that creeped me out. I was like, what? That's so odd. This mooch, this leech just shows up and just starts saying, this is our stuff. And it's, I never thought they were gay. Sam Simon was married to Jennifer Tilly. You can't be gay married to Jennifer Tilly. And
as time goes on, I get more suspicious of like, yeah, it does seem like Howard and Ralph were more than friends, and it seems like Sam might have rented him. Just wild speculation here, but Ralph has said he's a bisexual man. He likes everybody. So he wasn't really that talented. It seems. He dressed Howard and was never a big Ralph guy myself. But as you pointed out, he did help Eric the Midget become a thing. Once he got the Ralph stamp of approval, Howard was more open to him.
I was not a fan of Ralph. Did not get it, did not understand it. If you just believed, what you were told on the air, I just believed he was Howard's friend and that Howard felt some sort of loyalty to him, to give him money, like the same way that you might, if you have some windfall and you have a friend who's down on his luck. What I think was, or at least what they, alluded to on the air, was that Ralph took a paycheck but also never tried to do anything more, and just lived off of what Howard paid him, and Howard paid him out of pity, and I have no idea what he made, but I don't think could have been much for the services that he gave, but he was just a friend of Howard's, and Howard just gave him money for doing something, and Ralph was a lazy guy and just didn't really care, but tried to make that salary work. And I could be wrong. I have no idea. But the fact that was his persona was enough to make me hate him. I was like, you lazy piece of shit, scumbag leech. Why? And it was always funny that people would tell Howard and Howard just be like, yeah, I know, I don't care. And I always thought that was the right approach, which was, someone telling you something, hey, this person's, leeching off of you. Yeah, well, I'm not a sucker if I know that I'm being played, and I respected Howard's approach to it while still hating Ralph. But in hindsight, it is kind of funny that without Ralph, I don't think you'd have some TV characters. I think that Ralph might have been like the inspiration for Dwight Schrute, a funny person that's hateable.
Greg Daniels, former Simpsons that went on to King of the Hill and Office, and going back to follow the creative people when the original show isn't what it used to be. I never thought of that, of Ralph possibly being a Dwight Schrute type.
That was the weird thing, was that like you just needed somebody to hate. And I would love to say that was Howard's genius. I don't think it was. I do think he recognized it. He just said, if everybody hates this guy and everyone's on board and he can roll with the punches, this is going to be funny content. And I don't think that was ever introduced before. A lovable, or I'm sorry, not lovable, but a hateable person that you don't really hate, a dislikable person who doesn't cross the threshold of hate. And what's funny though, is people did hate Ralph, and they did hate, or they did enjoy him getting his balls busted and people, messing with him while he was there. But at the same time, there were some
people
okay.
that really didn't like Robin either. The Robin is wrong site. I remember there was a lot of Robin hate coming in. Looking in hindsight, I thought that Robin was one of the more level-headed people. She's a fucking loon. She is a crazy person too.
You're absolutely right. And it's funny how much stuff comes in hindsight. And Robin was always a character on the show, in that she was trying to be the voice of reason, but what was funny was they never hid the fact when she had her moments of craziness. And she had a lot, like times where she would walk off the air, and times, where she would get mad at someone and just lose her mind screaming. And I don't know, I always felt like I was kind of hip to it, where I was like, no, she's crazy. But when she was stating news and facts, that she heard, I was like, whatever. I don't know. It never bothered me, as long as she was the person who was there to be objective when it came to the news,
Something that I got after the fact was the saga of her book, Quivers a Life, or as Jackie called it, Quivers a Lie. And as more time passes, she has called that fiction. It does sound like that it wasn't entertaining enough to be released by what the publisher wanted. So they went in there and just injected it with some controversy to sell some copies of the book. It does seem like Jackie was right in calling it Quivers a Lie.
And I even as a devoted Stern fan, I never had any desire to read that book, because well, first off, there was stuff in it that I just didn't want to read. And then also I was like, I don't care enough, and also the title will throw you off. That sounds like somebody who's self-absorbed. Quivers a Life, I
forget
don't know.
if that was, I think that was right before she tried to be Ophelia Quivers.
Yeah.
And that did not last long.
I remember when Jackie read a portion of her book as the Robin character.
Woo, the Queen Robin. Oh,
God, that was funny. I say, when he was like,
he would really hit the I.
Yeah. Man. And you know who doesn't get talked enough about? I mean, everyone remembers the Jackie years, the Artie years. Billy West was a fucking just genius on that show.
He was still up and coming at the time. He was on Nickelodeon. Actually, I think it was the late 80s he got in there, so he didn't have his Nickelodeon gigs yet. And he started blowing up by the time that he left the show in 95. He was like the guy in voiceover industry.
Yeah. And when we talk about quick, this guy wasn't just witty. He was able to be witty, funny, and also do a funny voice, impersonate someone's voice. I mean, the guy just does not get enough credit. The Marge shot, and the balls to say shit like that.
He was saying that shit in Los Angeles during the riots. It was on the History of Howard Stern, where he revealed there are race riots going on around me, and I am doing this Marge shot character with her millionaire. Another thing I remember from that is that the voice of Marge Schott wasn't based on her. it was based on a TV movie with Jane Curtin doing a Bostonian accent. So he
that's
took
funny.
that bad Bostonian accent from Jane Curtin and did the Marge Schott character with that.
Well, that's what they are. He's like, and to all the, I'm not going to say it. Don't worry. But he was like, and yeah, the Larry Fine, oh my God,
which turned into Stimpy. The Larry Fine was the Stimpy voice,
and the brilliance of him, in my opinion, was that he had this. First off, I don't find impressionists to be all that funny or even entertaining, but he had this talent where while most impressionists do recognizable voices like, Peter Falk or Christopher Walken, he dug deep into these obscure characters and
everyone had a Curly. No one had a Larry Fine.
Yeah, exactly. And then he would do Larry Fine, or he would do the gay oh my God, Raymond Burr. He would do Raymond Burr as an out gay man, because right after the news came out, or I don't think it came out until after he had died, that Raymond Burr was gay, had a partner that he lived with. He kept it a secret, and so Billy West would do this character of Raymond Burr as an out gay man, and it was so funny, and like just saying random shit. I can't even think of a good quote, but it was always him miserable, like, I'm gonna put on my makeup and dance. Like, I mean, it was just it was so politically incorrect. It was so offensive. It was so funny. Oh, and like Lucille Ball in the hospital.
Oh yeah,
that one,
doing the very Lucille Ball in the 80s. Her voice was just ravaged by those cigarettes. I definitely remember some of the Billy West Lucille Ball.
I think they did an I Love Lucy as well. They did a few
Billy West with the Lucy very cigarette ravaged voice.
And it was always her like asking to die. It was, I just want to die. like it was always her giving up on life. And that shit was so funny because it was just so original. It was so original. It was so unique, but also it was all these references that people understood at the time anyway. And weren't doing. No one was doing this. No, he wasn't out doing Dana Carvey's stupid bits of Paul McCartney and George W. Bush. He was just doing the most obscure, ridiculous characters and then putting words in their mouth that were so funny. I mean, that was pure gold.
He would have had to done that if he would have gone the route of like Saturday Night Live. Artie Lang told the story of one of his cast members. I think it was David Herman, who was doing a Pauly Shore character. And he had these headphones in listening to Pauly Shore all day, buddy. And then one day just had a complete flip out from listening to Pauly Shore for hours on end.
I remember. They gave him audio tapes and they had to listen to him in headphones. And he's like, hey, buddy. He's like, I'm tired. I quit. Do you remember that? Okay. So do you remember also that was part of the pig story? And with the pig story, I've never forgotten this because I remember just like, do you ever laugh so hard that you feel like you're transcending, like you might pass out? This part of the pig story, I've never forgotten. It just made me laugh so fucking hard that Dave Herman had these neighbors in an apartment. It was like a little rabbit trail that already goes down that were always playing loud music, and that he would go and knock on their door and ask them to turn it down. And they'd say, oh yeah, man, sorry. And then within like a short while, the music would be loud again. And Dave Herman got so pissed off that he was traveling, and he created an audio tape with a loop from the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young song that goes do 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 do, and took just that one clip and played it over and over and over into an audio and blasted the speakers next to the wall of the neighbors and left for a weekend. Do you not remember that?
I don't remember that story. No.
He told the story on Howard, and that he leaves and he was like, fuck them. I'm gonna make their entire weekend hell for all the shit they put me through. So it was when he like 48 hours solid of do 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 do, and then he came home and his door had been knocked down because they called the police. That story, I mean, I was laughing so hard at that, and those were the good old days, man. Like any given moment, you could just be laughing till you piss your pants.
The police knocking down the door does remind me of a story of when Jim Florentine and Jim Norton were living together, and Florentine did a terrorizing telemarketers. Oh, those are classic phony phone calls. The terrorizing, and they went out to dinner. And their door was knocked down when they got back. It was one of those where like they pretended to be dying at the end or something, and they called the police, and their door was knocked in from the police. And Nimrob, thank you for the $1.99 super chat. He wants to remind us of Larry Fine at Woodstock, phenomenal.
Yes.
I remember don't drop the brown acid. I can't do a Larry Fine.
Yeah.
That's what I remember most of Larry Fine at
you
Woodstock.
bunch of hot-ons.
And hearing that original audio, there were like two different MCs. One that was talking to the crowd. There was one that was just very pissed off of this madness happening around him, and like if you drop the brown acid, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
And then another more hippie in with it. Look, if you drop the brown acid, you're gonna have a bad time. You're not gonna like they're already having a bad trip, and there's someone on the main stage telling them they're gonna die during this bad psychedelic trip.
That's funny. Yeah, that was some good, just unique, crazy stuff. Another great moment, I occasionally just go through YouTube and try to find Billy West moments, was the laugh competition.
I love that.
With Jackie Marling.
That's like learning to do Jackie's laughs. Like I figured out what Billy West did. That makes me laugh so much. The impression of Jackie's laugh.
He's like, okay, Jackie, do this. Yeah, Jackie, do this. And he goes, or they play it, and he goes, now, Billy, do yours.
It was on Fred's board. Fred had all of Jackie's laughs on board, in case a school bus full of children was thrown over the side of the bridge and everyone died.
Those were so fucking funny. And yeah, when he has Billy imitate them, I mean, Billy does them spot on. I mean, like so incredibly perfect. But there's this one moment where Howard is like trying to prove to the audience, that Billy can do any voice if you ask him to, or whatever. And he says, okay, Billy, do this voice. And he does it. And he goes, now do Larry. And I mean, not a second misses. He goes, now do Larry Fine. Mo, I peed on my shoe. Like just right out of his head comes this, like that one moment where he's demonstrating that his ability to do Larry makes me laugh so hard. Mo, I peed on my shoe. I can't do a Larry voice, but
I can try to do it Stimpy, but it's nope, it's not there. I used to think I was a good impressionist, but then I heard myself back. No, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm nowhere close. But yeah, if I could do a good Larry, that's exactly what I would do. And I think if I'm not mistaken, I think that Billy West was also a paid consultant on the Three Stooges movie that got made like 10 years ago, where
the one with Will Sasso.
Yeah,
a lot of Mad TV alumni we're getting into. David Herman, Will Sasso, Artie Lang. And
Yeah.
David Herman, I thought it's like just a random person you kind of remember. He was in Office Space, and then like, oh, he's one of the utility guys on Futurama. It's neat that that they pop up of like, oh, all right, they're still doing stuff.
Yeah, and I think he was a lot on King of the Hill too.
Yes, he was. He was a utility guy on King of the Hill as well.
Will Sasso, underrated, funny guy. Anything that guy does makes me laugh. And he has a show. He has a podcast called Dudesy. If you've ever watched it, it is nuts. And I actually stopped watching it because it got a little scary. But it is a podcast that is completely curated by AI. The AI has a voice, and it actually determines the content for the show. And in order for these two human hosts, Will Sasso and another guy, to participate, they actually had to give the AI access to all of their internet accounts, social media accounts, bank accounts, in order for it to come up with content for them to talk about. And it is slowly evolving, and it's totally real. And it's Dudesy, Dudesy. Check it out. But I actually stopped listening to it because the AI is learning, and it gets scary when they got a cease and desist letter from Tom Brady because because the AI created a stand-up act out of just them joking that if Tom Brady did stand-up, what would it sound like? And it created an hour-long special with Tom Brady's voice telling jokes. And if you listen to it,
I'm
it
gonna have to
sounds
check out Dudesy.
100% real. Well, that's the thing. They took it off the air, so you're gonna have to actually find the audio of the Tom Brady stand-up act. But it is Tom. I mean, it sounds exactly like Tom Brady doing a stand-up act with an audience and interacting with the audience. And it is frightening. You even hear him breathing. You hear him taking pauses. You hear him doing crowd work where he's like, no, but I'm serious, folks. Listen, hey, who's this guy? Blah, blah, blah. And telling real jokes. And they played it on the air, and Tom Brady did not realize that they were joking and actually sent them a cease and desist letter because he thought they were trying to sell this with his voice on it, and it was too real. And it's frightening. It is frightening. But we were talking about Will Sasso. Will Sasso's the host. It's called Dudesy.
Yeah, Will Sasso. I saw him pop up in Louder Milk. Showed up on Netflix. I enjoyed that. One of the Farrelly brothers. They had a string of fun movies. I talked about Kingpin recently. Actually, before we get too far away from Billy West and all the voices that he does, I think I mentioned it just yesterday that he cracked the code on Popeye the Sailor Man, where you've got to make two sounds at once to do Popeye the Sailor Man. Skibbity bib, skibbity bib.
I love Squoil.
And he says it is absolute murder on his throat of Tuvens. He says Tuvan singers do two syllables at once. Actually, I remember one of them showing up on the Jay Leno show. Random aside there. But two voices at once, even that Billy West was able to accomplish, but he doesn't want to do it very often because it kills his vocal cords.
Interesting. Real quick, Will Sasso one time did an episode of Fighter and the Kid and told a story about working with the Farrelly brothers that is one of the funniest fucking stories I've ever heard. And I'll give you a rundown of it. Is that apparently the Farrelly brothers had parents who were also very funny and they loved practical jokes. And that one time, and their dad was a doctor. And that one time, as Peter and Bobby were teenagers, that I think it was Peter sat down next to his dad while he was watching football and just started scratching his ass really hard and then moving around and was like, acting like it hurt. And his dad was like, what's wrong? And he goes, I don't know. Something in my ass hurts really bad. And just wouldn't let it go, kept doing it. And that his dad was like, well, let me look at it. Because his dad was a doctor and wanted to help him. And he goes, I don't know. That's just weird. And he's like, no, okay, whatever. And he like resisted and just kept saying, and just kept acting like his ass hurt. And his dad was like, let me look. I'm a professional. It's okay. All right. So he pulls his pants down and he had a condom hanging out of his ass. And he said his father burst out laughing and said, "Go show your mother." I was like, if I ever did that to my father would not find that funny. Anyway.
How did you get the beans above the Frank? That's what really. I guess we should wrap up soon. I'm about at the 2-hour mark. But the something about Mary, that gross out comedy, is what got them on the map. And then I believe Dumb and Dumber was before that, and that was fairly. But something about Mary, they blew up, and the Sham Wow guy. Oh, what's his fucking name? Christopher something. He used to have a cable access show that was very gross out comedy, and he was like, the Farrelly brothers stole my style. I want to look up this guy's name. The underground comedy movie. I bought it on VHS, and it was fucking awful. Vince Offer, the Sham Wow guy, has a feud against the Farrelly brothers for stealing his gross out humor style before he went on to be a pitchman.
I've never heard that. That's funny. And that name also immediately makes me think of Jack Mayhofer.
Hey, welcome to the Jack and Rod Show.
I'm Rod Stiffington.
We've got a man that's hard of hearing, Riley. That's another phony phone call that's just lived with me forever. Huh?
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 Huh? Riley, I'm speaking to you. Can you hear me?
Oh, she had such an old lady voice. It reminded me of Diane Rehm from NPR at that time. Riley, what did the doctor tell you?
Huh?
And then she would say it slower. Riley. I wonder how long that unedited form was, because that went on for a while, even after, because they edited it down to get it succinct. So that, like, some of those raw formats, I'm like, how long did they keep this person going?
Do you remember the one with it was the Jack and Rod show? The author, they had Blue Iris saying, "I'm a witch." Do you remember that one?
I vaguely remember it now that you mentioned it.
Yeah, where she just starts going, oh my God. No, wait, I'm getting them confused. There was that one, but she just said a bunch of, horrible things and made the guy go away. But then I'm confusing that one with the Wendy one where she just keeps going, "Rah!"
I'm Freddy Krueger.
And then the guy was like, okay, and like he'd stop, and then he started talking again, and they would just try to interrupt him. He's just like, so the book is about
So this has been a nice little plug for Unboxing Eric and the unboxing episodes. I've heard you discuss on the air of maybe unboxing JD, maybe unboxing Riley. There's so many more rabbit holes to go around. And Eric, there is a finite amount. Whereas Riley, I don't know if you could find his shows on Sirius, or JD. He's just been there for so long. That's more of a daunting task to take on one of the staffers' appearances.
And it's funny because I think that every whack packer is entertaining for a different reason. I don't think any of they all appeal to us, but all of their quirks and mannerisms and things that they're memorable for are all different. And we want to pick the right one. We're going to spin a wheel eventually and pick one. Riley, is just he's crazy and he had his moments of being belligerent. I feel like there's some on there also that we're not going to include because they get a little sad, like for me anyway. No, we're probably going to exclude some of the sad content, but I didn't want to include Bigfoot 2 because I thought that his story gets a little too dark. And if we're going to tell his whole story, that like it would be kind of odd. I think I got outvoted on that one.
I set the apartment on fire. It is.
Yeah. And like, so Casey's a big fan of Bigfoot, you know, the funny moments of Bigfoot, but man, the dark parts of Bigfoot are really dark. And so we have to skip over those. There's no way we could include that.
Of course, Bigfoot 1 actually was an actor. He would pop up on shows every now and then.
Yeah.
Eric was basically a publicity stunt for shows when he got a job.
And then Suzanne Muldowney, I loved Underdog, but I loved it because of her relationship with Shuli.
Shuli helped bring her back. That's one that he's like she was not on the radar, and I was like, there was more to be mined from Underdog Lady.
And I like it was interesting because her by herself, she wasn't that funny, but the fact that she trusted Shuli, only trusted Shuli, and then started becoming more and more of a contributor to the show while on Sirius because of Shuli. I think that's just a great story. I loved it because, you know, you had those moments where she would have like these mental breakdowns and Shuli would like kind of talk her out of it. And she'd be like, well, you know, I'm getting attention. And I felt like even though she was a little slow, I felt like she fully understood the rules of the game where we were there. She understood this was unusual and people are going to laugh at her. But then there were just these brief moments where you had to think, wait, does she get it? I don't know. I don't know if she gets it. But anyway,
Wilmington, Delaware. I will always remember as a place where Artie Lang got his heroin, apparently where Underdog Lady was from. And Debbie the Pet Lady, she can still be seen on TikTok. She pops up every now and then. She's made the final cut once to be on TikTok around the clock tomorrow. Tomorrow. Sorry, I started reading that chat. No member show tomorrow, but there will be double shows next week as I'm pre-recording before I go out of town. So next week, some live shows, and then 11:30 p.m. I'm aiming for some members-only live shows that will then be premiered on the regular time slot the following week to the wider audience.
Yeah, I was not a fan of Debbie the Pet Lady. It was too much. It was like just too much sensory overload with her. But I know she had a following, so I might be outvoted on that one.
She had her moments, but yeah, I can see how she would be too much. Let's get some plugs in for you, Papa Electro. And I meant to, we filled up the time plenty, just reminiscing of yesteryear's entertainment. But I meant to bring up a video of your YouTube channel of the great moments in the Dabbleverse. You are covering those. You are turning into a clipper of the past rather than current content, helping us remember those good times of Stuttering John's DC trip. And Stuttering John's, my favorite. I was happy when you told me you've already got a clip of the beloved Chatter's beloved one charity scam.
Yeah. It's just funny. It's Papa _Electrico.
Electrico. I missed that. Ico. Same over there on Twitter with a lot of AI art.
And I just feel like so much happens in the Dabbleverse that people forget about this stuff. And I've had more than one moment where watching a show, like maybe Uncle Rico or WATP, where John says something and I think of a moment where he contradicted it, or a moment where it would be a good reference point to make for this moment, but nobody at that moment on that show remembers it. Or thinks of it, and I was like, why are people forgetting this stuff? And then I realized, it's because there's always new stuff coming in. Of course we're forgetting about it.
Just so inundated with this idiocy that some of the dumbness is forgotten.
So I just thought to myself, and there needs to be a go-to timeline of iconic moments where someone can say, hey, when did this happen? And so I put dates in the descriptions also for all these moments, and I'm open to suggestions from people to give me, some ideas for some other iconic moments. I've actually changed the name of that playlist to Iconic Moments in the Dabbleverse because I don't want it to just be focused on me. Saying they're my favorite moments. I want them to be a place for people to go. And maybe if you're new to the Dabbleverse, you can see a full history of it once it's all completed and done. But I've been getting a lot of positive feedback, a lot of negative feedback too. But a lot of primarily positive feedback of people who have said they've either forgotten stuff or maybe didn't even know that something existed and saw it. And it gives context to something else they like. And it leads into another part of where they started the Dabble, getting into the Dabbleverse. So I'm very, very glad that I'm able to help with that. And it's been a lot of fun putting together. And I've even had to go back a few times and be like, wait a minute, when did that happen? And then I'll look at that and then I'll actually go down a rabbit hole and be like, well, how did this conclude before I go on to my next, topic? It's weird, man. It's my own little obsession. But I am glad that it's helping some people, and it's really gotten my numbers up because my YouTube channel is brand new. It's only been up a month and a half, and I am more than halfway to monetization in a month and a half. So thank you to everyone out there who's been supportive.
Nice. Yeah, people like the clip channels. Some of the newer clipper channels, Stallion 19 passed me real quick. I've got I look at Bobby Fran, who's doing something similar to me. I call him the Saturday Night Live to my Mad TV. We're around similar areas with hundreds rather than the thousands, because people like the clippers. It's a more refined taste to try to build an audience from rambling on ourselves.
And Unboxing Eric is a chronological history of all of the calls Eric the Actor made into the Howard Stern Show. That is Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. It is a lot of fun. We really love that show, and would love any kind of interaction. All super chats are read by Eric live on the air. And if you ever thought about having Eric say something, give us a watch. Throw us a super chat and we'll make sure Eric says it.
I threw down the Animal House 0.0 quote for Eric to say.
I remember that one.
I was happy
that one was great.
to get the 0.0. I don't believe that's been ruined for DJ Electra yet. You guys were surprised. You know what to do, and that's actually the outro of your guys' show. Every single episode after the song is "You Know What to Do."
Yeah, it's funny because we have dropped other things around her that we feel are still kind of guarded secrets that she doesn't totally know. And when she actually knew the full context, we're like, oh, well, all right, well that spoiled that. But at the same time, we couldn't have possibly expected to say all this stuff without her catching on, and so we have to be.
Yeah, the 0.0 does not appear to have been spoiled. That's one of my absolute favorites. I already got ahead of you guys. I found another channel because once this started, I was like, I want to hear the 0.0 saga now.
Yeah, no, I've done a little bit of the same, but. Thanks so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. I do have a hard out actually right about now. So this is perfect timing. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, dude.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming in and joining me and getting this. Where am I going with my words? Let's just wrap up before I tongue tie myself any more than I already have. Thank you for joining me, Luigi Greenberg, talented AI artist and a fun person to do some bullshitting with. Papa Electro.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me, man. It's always fun. Always hanging out with you. Always fun to hang out with you.
We're both getting tongue-tied now. Once it hits the 2-hour mark, it's the hard out for us if we want to or not, because our mouth stops doing what we want it to do. Last time there was a cock in there. Hey-o.
Thanks again, man.
And thank all you beloved chatters for joining. Now feel free to go away.
Well, it looks like that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for going on this adventure with me. It's fun being with friends. I'll see you next time. Bye now.
Bye for now.
Toodaloo. Au revoir. Auf Wiedersehen. Ciao. Ding dao day.
Places all. All join hands, circle left. Now circle right and listen to me. LS, MFT. Elementary corners like swinging on a gate. To right to your honey with the right left date. Grand right and left around you go. Lucky strike means fine tobacco. Meet your honey and give her a whirl. All swing around with the little girls. Smoke 'em, then you'll see. LS, MFT. Promenade and don't you fall. Promenade around the hall. Lucky strike is first again with tobacco men. Promenade straight down the pike. It's time right now for a lucky strike. Yes, for smoking that you're bound to like, you just can't beat a lucky strike.